Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Today we've got myself, Bryan. We've got Dan.
How you doing?
And we've got Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, what are we talking about today? Now we got our first question in from the field, so we figured we address that and see where the conversation leads us. So a question that we actually get this one in kind of a pretty wide variety of forms, right? We've gotten it from clients, we've gotten it from some of our vendors, but came in from the field. And the question is, how big is Berg Construction? And really what they're talking about, how many people do we have, right? Because they know a relatively new person, they know the folks that they're working with, but they don't know the scope of Berg Construction. So how big is Berg Construction? Who knows the answer? Anyone?
Well, the person that started talking should know this answer better than the rest of us do.
All right, that's fair. All right, 72 people currently on our employment roster. So 72 is our magic number, and that fluctuates a lot. So I mean, it's sort of a little bit of seasonality to it. We tend to be heavier in our busier months, and then through attrition or otherwise, pare back down a little bit in the fall and the winter. Not that we need fewer people in those times, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that maybe, but yeah, 72. So why is what impact does that 72 number have on who we are and what we do?
Well, it's funny, right? So I remember years ago we sat down, and Nina loves to have her little chart. So Nina was
Nina?
Nina was a consultant that we had in the going back probably 7-8 years. Nina came in, and when Ford realized that Ford and I couldn't do this by ourselves, we were fairly certain we could. As it turns out, we could not. And so Nina came in to just look at some processes and see things we were doing. And Ford and I have had a lot of fun making fun of Nina since then for the things that she said we could or couldn't do. And we like to prove that we can do them, even though she says we couldn't. But all that to say, Nina had looked at it and she gave us a schedule, and it was like, well, when you have 20 people, you have this problem. And when you have 40 people, you have this problem. When you have 50 or 60, and she's got this whole schedule. And Ford and I looked at it, and I remember we just laughed because it was like, there's no way you can have a schedule that says, I'm going to have a problem at, mile marker 27. Like, that's ridiculous. And as we've grown, ironically, our schedule's not far off. We do tend to run into the problems that she says we would, because they've done an immense amount of research, and companies growing in any number of different fields, they start to feel the same problems, have to deal with the same issues, regardless of, whether it's 1995 or 2005 or 2019. It didn't really matter. Issues were pretty consistent. So we brought Nina on. She, and that's one of the things that really got me, was that it was actually that simple, that I could know the problems I was going to hit. So that's where numbers are important for me. Is, we know, quite honestly, that the next marker is 100. If we get to 100, things will change that we'll have to address. It may not be felt in the field. In a perfect world, the field won't feel the changes that we have to deal with. It's just different in how we have to manage the back office, as they say, and our processes to be able to handle the additional work that goes with being that size. So it doesn't make a big difference to me if we're 40 or 70 or 100 in terms of we're going to do the same work and we're going to repeat it and just do more jobs of it. But it has certainly made a difference in how we facilitate supporting our team at this number.
I think part of that question is, how big are we, or how many people do we have? Does that matter, right? So 72 people, and you talked about it. Like, the size, of course, has an impact on who we are and how much we do. But one of the things that you said there when you were talking, like, you can sort of project what our problems are going to look like, or what our workload might look like, or our schedule might look like, when you know how many people we have. What's the problem? There's too many variables there.
Yeah, I mean, the variables are too widespread as well, quite honestly. Like, in other words, this season, you said we'll get here now. This season, we started off, and if you really think about it, even going back into last year, COVID impacted jobs starting. So we had jobs that were delayed. Then you come out of winter, and you come into what we would really consider our 2021 work season. And we have a reasonable winter. We're able to start working. For the most part, it's cold, but we can work. We have COVID jobs that have backed into this year and have pushed because of when they started. We then start our jobs. We're a little bit heavy, but not bad. We're feeling pretty good about where we are, pretty good about our numbers. Feel like we have the right makeup and the right personnel to be able to do this work. And we start to hit additional work, change orders. We start to hit rock, we hit water, we hit some weather delays, some just jobs that have additional work that wasn't foreseen in the original contract. Meanwhile, still fighting the same COVID issues that hinder us to be able to go at full bore, because through the early part of this year, we were seeing significant quarantine shutdowns. So all this leads to jobs pushing out further. Sometimes purely because the job got bigger, sometimes because conditions shut it down, sometimes because engineering and permitting wouldn't be allowed because the government entities weren't running efficiently. But it pushed it all out. And so now when we earmarked, we have enough work to keep 70 people busy for an entire year, and then we're going to continue to go after more work for next year. All of a sudden now we're doing the work for 70 people that we thought we were going to do in June. And we're also trying to do the work that we were going to do to start new jobs for the 70 people in October. And we're also talking to owners who are saying, you got to get this curbed and paved. And it creates a lot of stress for the team. But it isn't because we didn't plan for 70 guys. It isn't because we went after too much work. It's because our business has so many variables that you're trying to account for, whether it be, the workload, the conditions in weather, the conditions below the ground, or now the impact of a virus going around that's shutting things down, regardless of where you fall in your belief of it.
I don't know the data, but I think we're also plus people this year. We've been able to bring in people, out on a job site, and someone's like, I don't have enough people or whatever it is. But, the interesting thing is it's kind of like equipment. We talked about back when all I had was a 314, and I did everything with that machine. I did stuff that was too big for it. I did stuff that was too small for it because that's the only thing I had. And, part of this is what we're talking about this fall, like, everybody feeling, a level of stress that isn't really what we were targeting. It's just that certain things happen. And the only way to get through them and get them over with is to get it done. We have multiple jobs that in the next month or so will probably be wrapped up, and then that'll be put to bed. But some of these jobs are maybe 18 months behind on the schedule that we were presented by our client when we started them due to issues. And so it really creates a scenario. And I think that's where like the seeing the forest through the trees scenario happens, because right in front of you, it sucks. But, once it gets done, all of a sudden things will get back to a little bit more normal. It's just that right now it's a push. It's really interesting. I laugh. It's kind of like people that don't remember Christmas comes on the 25th. Every fall, owners and clients are like, oh, I don't know why, but we got to get this done. It's like, yeah, 3 months ago when you wouldn't get us the plans for that job, it's kind of a problem now, because all of a sudden, you're going to want something done, and so does everybody else. So the paving crews, the curb guys, all the stone crews, all that stuff, there's only so many of those people to go around, and so they can't magically do all the jobs within a month and a half schedule. Once the first cold 30 degree, or the first time a client gets in their car and there's ice on the windshield, it just, every year it's the same thing. This year it's a little worse for us because of the fact that we have a couple extra jobs that we weren't planning on to still be in. But in the first case, it's just every year everybody gets excited when it gets close to potentially the end of the season. But here today, it's like 60 degrees. So it's just, in this part of the country, I talked to people up in Vermont, and they close down December 15th and start back March 15th. Like, they just shut down completely. Here, we're kind of always rolling the dice, because you never know. You might be able to work all winter long. You might be able to have to shut down for a couple of weeks. You never know when that end date of a season is going to be. And so you're always just trying to get as much accomplished in each year as you can.
Yeah. Something sort of shooting off of what you're saying there, Ford, is I want people to I want the team to realize, like, in other words, we all know that the juggling goes on. Like, I can tell you sitting here today on, December, 2nd? On December 2nd, I can tell you that next year, December 1st, we can sit here and have this same discussion and talk about how every client wants to be paved and curbed within the next 15 days. It's going to happen again. We're going to have to juggle again. Now, this year, I do feel like we're juggling a little bit more than we would have in the past, and it's made people really uneasy. But it's not because we didn't know we were going to have to juggle. This was always going to happen. And how we handle that stress, how we handle that is really important for our own health as well as for the company's health. Because if you know it's going to happen, I think you can be a little bit less stressed. You can know that we're going to get through it. Like, we're going to get everything we can paved. We're going to get everything we can curbed. We're going to get to the best position we can. The only thing we really have to watch is ending up in a position where an owner forces us to do something that they don't sign off on, that we tell them is a bad idea. That has happened. It happened last year. It was bad in that instance, and I'm not going to call it out. The people who were involved, no. It was bad for our team. It was bad for the client. And it was bad for us as a company. We should not have paved that lot. And we did, because we felt the pressure from them. We didn't juggle well enough on that day. So it's one of those things that you really just gotta know it's coming, and you gotta just prepare yourself for it, and you gotta know that it's gonna pass. And once it does, we'll be back to normal and where we are.
Yeah, great point. One of the other things that I was thinking about when I was looking at this question here, was what does that size, that number of employees mean to the rest of our folks? As an organization, it means some things from a scheduling perspective, how much work we can do. But if you look at our employees' bios, and not everybody's got one up on the website, but a lot of people do. A lot of them say the same thing, right? A lot of them talk about liking the atmosphere, right? The size of our organization, the atmosphere here. We operate a lot like a family business, and we're pretty much a family business here. We try and treat people like family. People say that a lot. We treat them like family. So I think one of the things that concerns people sometimes about that number is there a right number or a wrong number where it stops feeling the way we're trying to make it feel?
I think that is a question of how each...
It's a loaded question, by the way.
Exactly. We can hear. All right, we're going to get 3 hours. Hopefully you got a lot of time in your truck when you listen to this. Yeah. No, but I think that each pod, we'll call each team a pod, or each group a pod. And that's how each manager of each division, I deal with 3 to 5 people in the office on a daily basis. So I have great relationships in my mind with that group because I see them on a regular basis. I don't get to see some other people as much because of just scheduling. But if their manager has that great relationship with them, that feeling can stay, and the number doesn't really have to define that. It's just the fact that if and when that little group, it might be a 3-person team, if they don't have a tight relationship, it doesn't matter if the whole company has that culture, they won't feel it because they're not having it at that level. So part of that is, Dan said on a previous podcast about the fact that how important the foreman, superintendent, the field managers, the ones that are dealing with the sites and the team members every day matter, because they're the ones that are taking this out from what we want, what we're hoping they will follow through with. They're the ones that will actually make that feeling, and it could go to an unknown number with that same feeling if each individual team has that amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's also, this is a topic that Ford and I have discussed just recently, Bryan. And the way it came up was we were talking about growth and what it looked like and some things we had heard. And it really became, that's where our discussion went. Our discussion went to the point that, from my perspective, nothing has changed. It's just we've added people and we've filled those roles, and those people, given the guidance of our core values and of the verbal support and guidance that I'm able to provide, that you're able to provide, and Ford provides, they understand how we want to operate as a company. And so long as they operate their individual divisions, pods, whatever you want to call it, in that same way, you can broadcast that same message. You can maintain that same family feeling. You can maintain that same culture. And then it naturally translates because each of them is doing it individually. And when you put them together as a group, we can all sort of feel the same. It may not be that every person knows every person now, but we still treat people exactly the same. We still interact the same, and we still have the same expectation of who we want to be.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've got some guys with us still from when you were a 10-person company, and now at 72 people, I think most of them still feel like they work for the same place, which is really a tribute to how, Ford, you've you've sort of taken it upon yourself to treat people. Some of them, I think, get concerned at times, right? Because they don't necessarily report directly to you anymore. But like you're saying, Dan, as long as we get the right people in the right places on the bus, and they act like owners and they value relationships, it shouldn't really change who we are, what we do. We just got to keep empowering the right people, making sure that they are treating their folks like family, and that's how we keep it a tight knit group.
And Bryan, frankly, it is one of the reasons for the podcast. You know what I mean? Really, I mean, one of the reasons for the podcast is this is an opportunity where, if for some reason you want to hear me talk, which I don't know why you would, I don't even really like to hear myself talk, but if you want to hear me talk, we can have a conversation, albeit a little bit one-sided. And if you have a question about something I say, you reach out. Let Ford, Bryan, Dan, Tracy, like I'd say on the call on Monday, let one of us know what your question is. We'll answer the question very directly as you'd be used to. And then if you're asking the question, somebody else is probably asking the question too. So ask your question. We'll answer the question. We'll try and make it, as close to if I saw people every day like I did, 7 years ago. I will try and make it the same way. And the more we put the right people in the right places, ironically, the more you're going to see Ford and I. Like, in other words, if Ford and I can stop having to be in a spot where we can't get out to the field because we're trying to deal with things, then the more you'll see us there and interacting. Like, and that's the truth. You know what I mean? Neither Ford nor I wants to be stuck behind our desk, but we've sort of, it's one of those things like you built your own cage. You know what I mean? Like, we built our own cage, and now we have to figure out, okay, here's how we put people in a position, empower them to do these things and to move us forward. And then we can get back to doing what we want to do, which is being there, engaged with employees, with team members, feeling like we're all just, hanging out and having fun. Because what's the thing? If you enjoy what you do, you don't work a day in your life. You know what I mean? And that's how we want to run this company.
And I think with that, the only caveat I'm going to say to that, and it's not a caveat, but the reality is that, like, as growth has happened, there has to be changes. And, that's always people's toughest challenge. And the people that have ridden through since we've been 10 people, like, they've been able to ride that wave. Some people have had to leave because when something changes, they couldn't accept that new reality. We talked about before, it's part of the safety thing. It's having Blair here now. It's, documentation and, apps and different things. And it's constantly going to be changed. The only thing is constant is change. And so, I remember it was 6 of us and we wore shorts to work and, yada, yada, yada. That was cool. And that's part of our history. But as we've done different types of work and have more expertise, we get into different things that you can't stay still in this world because you'll be left behind by a long distance. And so the only way forward is to constantly change, adapt, and make the best of what we have in front of us.
Yeah, that's a great point. So that sounds like a good place to wrap this one up. 72 strong. Have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you soon.